So I am here with the Magic Cow Bridge House residents, community members, and I asked to speak to all of you about the issue of discovering discovering the clarity of context, and then I guess the how to decide that someone is in a different context and needs to be told outright, we want you to go, will you go? I wanted to hear how that was for everybody, and I wanted to share my own experience about living in a place where there's less of asking people to leave than I would do if I ran the circus. So I'd love to hear from any of you, and I feel like I've said enough, but if you want me to say anything else, I will do that.
What comes to me first is that this is because the Magic Cow Bridge House is contexted in radical responsibility, makes it very different than most communities or groups I've ever been part of or heard about. And yeah, I mean, I've been in so few places where that's the context, that radical responsibility is the context. And the only places I've been where radical responsibility is the context have been places where possibility management is being used to empower that context and to hold it and to train people to notice the context at all. I've only developed this kind of distinction of what context is because of possibility management that breaks context down into the relationship with responsibility. So I think that's a big part of it. And in this case where a person came here and that kind of pretty immediately became clear that they weren't really interested in a context of radical responsibility. It was hard to get that across because they do use possibility management, and they did agree to the context. So this is something that comes to me first.
Yeah.
And Nicole, I hear you say that it was clear that they weren't in the context. And I'm rewinding, trying to remember, how is it that I came about this clarity that they're in a different context? And it was this moment where we were having a discussion about what's the context of this leaving the patriarchy week that we are having going to be. And in the discussion, it was a lot of conversation about, I found myself trying to redefine what radical responsibility was, how that could even be possible, how that wasn't just a pipe dream, and the conversation became about requests for there to be more, there to be more love, and for there to be more gentleness when we were talking about responsibility. And there was this moment where gosh, there was this moment where it was basically presented that men have clarity and women have compassion. I don't remember the exact words. And the way that I was bringing clarity was not the way that they wanted it to be. And that I needed to not have the clarity in this way. And this was the way that the conversation was going. And I was so angry. I was so angry, and I was like, okay, all right, I'm gonna take this. I'm like, I'm gonna take this, and okay, we're really exploring here. We'll figure it out. What do you really mean by that? And it was the process of like, okay, what am I not getting? What am I not getting? Why do we keep missing each other on, okay, well, this is how it is. This is what we agreed to. We agreed this level of responsibility. We agreed that we're here to be adult and to be relating in this way. And it was like, oh, but I can't have you talk to me like that. Because when you talk to me like that hits a really old wound, and this is how it goes for me, and I can't live that way. And I had no idea how to create a context where I could work with all of the asks for what I needed to do to avoid making the person upset.
You said you were angry. What, you were angry because?
Because I had no idea how to navigate us to a conversation where I could hold a space for the person to be reflecting on their choices, and where I could be taking responsibility for my choices and my actions, and for them to be doing the same. And Ethna and Nicole, do you have any more to add on this moment? Because yeah, okay.
I remember this moment of this first night, having this first conversation. And I think it was you, Meredith, who offered some feedback to this person. And there was an immediate defensiveness. There was a huge wall that came up and a big gremlin attack that came out of like, well, no, you're misunderstanding me. You don't understand what I'm saying. And all feedback, not even just that night, but throughout the course of like the 5 days that they were here, was met with this defensive wall. And by the second day, I had kind of this question of who are you? Like, it felt like the way that I was interpreting what was happening was that Tina thought they were being attacked. That feedback was not care. It wasn't love in action. It wasn't gold. It wasn't being on someone's team, but it was an attack. That this is how it was going in their world. And I had no idea how to be on someone's team when they think I'm constantly attacking them. And so I had like my gremlin was reacting to theirs, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna pull away. I don't want to start the fight. I can't defend myself against these gremlin attacks, so I'm just gonna pull away. And that's how I navigated a lot of those days. But that's what really stuck out to me in that first night was I had no idea how to communicate with someone who sees me as an enemy and does not, and it feels like they have to defend themselves against me or defend themselves against any of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I would add to that, how a lot of what I heard from her was like taking a position or having a perspective. And that was a word that I heard used a lot. This is my perspective. And I was like, this context isn't about perspectives. This context is about a relationship with reality. And the defensiveness, like the only time the defensiveness would start to go down a little bit was was when there were just a lot of completion loops. And even then, when then there were feelings starting to happen, rather than this kind of like, kind of gremlin saying how it is and saying how we were and saying what we were doing, when the softening started, then it was, is this an emotion or a feeling? There was this way of the response that came was like, I want to be accepted where I am. And then it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, now there's a block to the territory of having an emotional healing process. And again, it was this, for me, this sense of being stymied, like all relating was stymied because there was this insistence on positions and accepting the person where they were at. And this is a place where it's like, my sense here is that I'm accepted where I'm at, and this is a team for transformation. This isn't about staying where I'm at. This is about transforming so that I'm not, coming from my box, coming from my positionality, coming from my opinions. And yeah, it just was really beyond our collective ability, Ethna, me, and Meredith, to like shift into another way of relating where they kind of, I don't know, in a way came with us into the context.
Yeah. Yeah, I can completely understand how it is when you're in that moment and the back and forth has started and it's not, and it would seem that if everybody's in the context of at least possibility management, that things at least start to, you're talking on the same page, and it sounds like it never really got there. You never had the same you had the same words, but they had different meanings or vocabulary mixing.
I'm not even sure that was it. And why I say that is because when I have experienced this person, when they're holding space, they know exactly what these terms, they use the distinctions.
Yeah.
And here also something that was emphasized to me through this experience was that possibility management isn't a context. I don't think possibility management is a context. I think it's a game world. It's a set of distinctions, tools, maps, and processes that empower, that you can use to create a context of radical responsibility. And I can't help but wish that I knew another game world that did that differently, but so far I don't. And this is where, like, when, there's a website called Positionality, and it breaks down that positionality is my box. And there's a website, that we don't, there's been a lot of discussion about not using these terms of feminine and masculine, as in what Meredith was talking about, that clarity is a masculine quality and compassion and love are feminine qualities, and we need to balance these. It's like, it's not really I don't find that a helpful conversation. And so when these were the kinds of conversations being brought, I just didn't know what to do with them, apart from start saying it looks like you're feeling something. And you know, and often then it was, well, no, it's, you don't understand me. And then often a repetition of the stories that I know that there have been lots of processes this person has had. And yet the way they were brought was, again, kind of as like, you know, it as almost an explanation as to why it's so hard for them to handle something about the clarity that was coming their way, or the feedback that was coming their way.
An explanation like a history or like a
Yeah.
uh-huh. Did any of you, and yeah, I'm curious if any of you did EHPs around the issues with Tina, the problems, the things that came up in you about what was happening with her at the time?
I didn't. Yeah, I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, I don't think I did either.
I did, but it wasn't until much later in the process. And it was with my Gremlin 3 cell, of which this person was a part,
The person was there?
which was a mistake in retrospect. I held back and didn't get my full clarity out of it.
I can't hear you that well. That's not...
In that space out of fear. And so it was not the right space to go into that process for me. And so had I done a do-over, I would have asked just one member of the 3 cell to hold space.
Yeah. I think it just occurred to me one thing that scared me, or I felt fear when I read, I can't remember where I heard or saw it, something Meredith wrote about when you realized that that you hadn't been using your clarity, or you hadn't allowed your clarity, as if the clarity was what was missing. Like, and what I'm saying about that is, I think clarity is very dangerous. It's one of the dangerous, I think it's the first of the Carlos Castaneda dangerous powers, or that's somewhere in the writing here, but I had read this long ago, that I know in myself, I have just always longed for clarity. And once I get clarity, I'm like clear, and it feels like it can be used to just not include other aspects or other information or something like that. And I wonder what you think of that, if that makes sense.
Leslie, it cut off just then. Would you repeat? You wonder what
If what you think of that, Meredith, and if that makes sense to to you that when you said you finally got this clarity about, you know, what it is you needed to say, or, you know, what was the thing that needed to happen in this situation? This is how I read it anyway. What do you think?
So you're asking me, your fear is that the clarity is dangerous, and that it, because it blocks out other ways of letting other things in. Am I getting this right?
Yes, and I would include mainly in that, what is the block in me? What's happening in me that is creating a need for I'm not sure what I'm saying. It's about not doing the EHP, about what is happening in me. Maybe something else could open up that could and I don't know all what happens, so this might have already happened. To cut kind of through the, wow, this isn't working, and that's very sad, or that's very, you know, like, we all wanted this to work, and we've been working on making it work, and it's not working, and it feels like a tragedy. I don't know, just like it feels. I'm not saying it is a tragedy. I'm saying that the feeling is that sometimes I have to build up my anger so that I can be clear. And then where's my radical responsibility about what?
I have a question for you. What I'm wondering is, do you have the assumption that I was using my anger for my clarity, and I was not feeling my sadness or the other things? Or that there was some way where I was being like super sharp and cold?
That's my question. I don't have an assumption.
Trying to
But
ask.
yeah.
I can tell how it was for me. I cried for 5 days straight with this person. I felt like I put everything I possibly could on, had a process where I put everything on the table, every fear I had, every sadness I had, every hope, every expectation. And I brought it all to them in a process that Nicole and Etna were holding space for. And it was heartbreaking. It was completely heartbreaking. And I feel really sad that the only message that what I'm hearing is coming across is that I had this clarity, and so I was being brutal with it. And this is how it kept going. I was coming from how I was feeling about what was going on. And I kept feeling this gremlin attack that I'm being too much of a man, having too much clarity, and where's my femininity?
Mm.
And I felt like I was going crazy. And God, I tried so many times. I wanted it to work out so badly. And so the solutions that I was bringing forward in the table were to make it work, not to get my way or to just have some clarity and then get my way. And I guess Etha and Nicole, I'm wondering how it came off, because I have my perspective of what it was like for me, and I don't know how it was landing in the space.
Yeah, something that comes is to your question about if anyone had EHPs, is that this is eventually when there was in a way an impromptu EHP where Dalway held space for Meredith to actually unmix the block she had. And then the clarity that came was simply, will you leave? And so I don't think it qualifies as using clarity as a weapon. It was that the clarity was blocked by Meredith's good girl box that couldn't ask someone to leave, that had to find another way, that had to be nice, that had to be understanding, had to be kind, and had to be compassionate, even while this kind of gremlin perspective of her being too masculine was in the space, which really, again, I was stymied. I was like, okay, if we're talking about clarity is masculine and this other thing that is about being understanding of this person as like right for Meredith to have instead of clarity, which Meredith was even struggling to have in the first place, just kind of took it in a direction that yeah, and you know, the three of us, we went for a walk to kind of give each other feedback and coaching, and we practiced a few things about like how to say some of the things that were coming up, like how to be with that in new ways. Yeah, and you know, where we came to on the last day, there was, to me, there was such a sweetness in it that this really was about gremlin contamination, the level of gremlin contamination, and we just really missed some things, like the process of determining that this person was a fit to come in the bridge house. Like, this is mostly where a lot of the learning really is showing
That
up.
you felt like it was, you should have known, kind of, or you missed that was part of what
Yeah.
would happen.
For my part, I'm remembering how I was shocked that the person was getting a yes, and I didn't say anything because I used this patriarchal thoughtware that said, well, the guardians have done their process and they've said okay, so I must be missing something because they know better than me, or something like that. And I didn't even bring it because I just thought, well, it's not my job. I'm not part of that. I'm not part of that node. And this is, yeah, to hear myself say that in particular out loud, I just feel so sad and mad that I let that thought work prevail.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
to answer your question, Meredith, it was, and to give more context, this was an extremely, like, this was a deeply painful space to be in for like all 5 to 7 days, however long it lasted. It was like, there was so much fear and sadness and anger in my personal experience. And to your question of like, how was my experience of your sword, what I kind of came up against was that when a person has a gremlin contamination this high, or a defensiveness that is this high, any amount of sword is too much sword. Any amount of clarity is too much clarity. And that's how it really felt. It felt like,
Can you explain that? Yeah, maybe you're in the middle.
yeah, that when someone is so committed to receiving feedback as an attack, there is no amount of gentleness that could be used to deliver the feedback that wouldn't be read as an attack. And that anything that has the slightest, it felt like my experience was that if there was the slightest amount of anger, of even conscious anger behind a share, the walls will come up and defensiveness comes up, and that you're attacking me, you don't understand me. And so I did not experience Meredith's clarity as too much or excessively harsh, or even harsh. A lot of what was being said felt necessary to me, like necessary feedback if you're going to be on someone's team, really be on someone's team. But what my understanding was that when someone refuses or does not accept feedback as being on a team, or love, does not accept that as love, then it's always going to be an attack. It's always going to be too much. That was my experience in that.
Another thing that's coming up for me right now is I feel really sad because I tried having I had a lot of conversations with this person, and we did as a team of like, there's nothing about you and your being that we do not like so many conversations being like, there's nothing wrong with you. We're not saying anything's wrong with you, that you're bad, that you even need to change. All we're saying is that what you're asking for is not something that we can provide in this space. This is not the space for that kind of healing work. This is not the space to be, I am not able to be nurturing these old wounds in the way that I'm navigating the space. And that's not what I'm doing in this experiment for 3 months, maintaining a space of radical responsibility. And there's nothing wrong with that being where the person is. But that's just not what we're doing here. And so it's not that kind of space. And the number of conversations that we had of trying to connect and share with the person that they're not bad or wrong, or what they need is bad. And that this story of that I'm feeling scared of this harshness and this, like, you're not accepted or wanted here, that I'm feeling scared is getting through, was just not how it went for me. And I just had this question of like, gosh, I feel a little bit crazy because I had at least 5 of those conversations. And so I'm sad that something I was doing wasn't working.
Yeah, well, like you said, it sounds like you're saying that it didn't get through to Tina.
I don't know.
Or me, perhaps.
I have no idea, but the way that I wanted to go about it was to be clear on what was happening in this project, in this experiment.
Yeah.
And say, this is what we're doing, this is what I'm doing, and I'm unwilling to do what you're asking because that's not in this space.
Right. Yeah. I appreciate that. And I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear from all of you. I really do share I just feel like I know what it's like on all the different levels. And it's also true that being clear, even with the most compassionate, caring, loving, everything, you still will get the kind of response that is like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, or that was a mistake, or that was a wrong thing to do, because that's part of it's part of what people do in our, maybe not in the radically responsible context, but I wanted to bring it out so that it was not an unspoken, where one person writes about what happened and gives, a certain view of it, and then we don't really feel the experience, how it was for the people in the house. And for me, it's really important to know how each of you felt. And I'd like to also hear from Dawe. I know that you were there near the end of the stay, but it happens here in my community where somebody runs out of money and they have to go, they have to leave, or they've broken one of our 4 rules and they have to leave. And there's every effort to tell them with as much respect and courtesy and help and everything possible to let them know that it's not that they're a bad person, it's just that they can't live here now. And it still gets through the community, oh, I can't believe they made this person leave. It's kind of like, I'm just want you to know it goes with the territory. It is part of radically responsible context setting. I'm sorry, but it is that people, either they're going to want to know or they're going to judge. And I didn't feel judgmental, really. I felt like, what happened? And I feel like I know more now, and I'm glad.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. I'm really glad you reached out and you shared that you cared about what happened, and you care about us, and you care about this person, and yeah, I feel really glad that you care about hearing about how it was and how we feel. And to Leslie, you're frozen. You might be frozen.
I think you're frozen. You're frozen on our computer that way.
They're both
Okay.
frozen.
We're all frozen.
Your connection.
Leslie, can you hear us again?
Now I can.
Okay.
Frozen for 30 seconds.
Okay. I haven't spoken at all, basically, because I was only here for basically the morning until the dinner time process that I held, where Meredith, Nicole, Ethna, and I each individually asked this person to leave. And I think everyone else was here for about a week before that. So my experience is just so limited. How I felt was felt really sad. I felt really sad because I'd come from an archetypal village space, an expand the box training, and I was coming back to uh, a really dear experience at the Magic House Bridge House. And then when I got here, there was so much energetic separation between all the people in the house. And I could sense that. I could sense that people were hiding away. I could sense that people weren't connecting. So I just got this, that all relational space was kind of disrupted. And I just felt sad and angry also. And I tried to show up with as little story as possible. So I would sit and expand the box training. So I hadn't, so my attention was largely somewhere else, but I had heard through messages, through some phone calls, that there was this big divide in the context. And basically what I observed at the dinner time process that I was holding space for was that there just, whatever was happening, we were pretty far from having connection. That Meredith had this huge fear of speaking her clarity. And actually, as far as her using her clarity, to your earlier question, I held a decontamination process for her, a child ego state decontamination process at the dinner table. And she still couldn't even get to saying, I would like this person to leave. I actually sort of had to guess. I had to say, would you try this out? It seems like you're trying to say this. Would you try it out, saying, I want this person to leave? And Meredith's child contamination was so high that she could even know that this is what she wanted to say, and then she would kind of say, I don't know, I don't want to, I don't want to go there. That's too scary. And yeah, but just what I observed was so there would be these kind of really risky moves, especially by both Meredith and Ethna, where they were stepping far outside of their box. And in the context of what we're doing here, I think that's really valuable. That would sort of be the currency. It's the currency that's at play in the Magic House Bridge House, is this kind of transformation and being on each other's team for this kind of growth. And it would have been great if this could have been met with similar vulnerability by this person of, wow, I get it that you've put your whole survival at stake by saying this, and that's a massive doorway to then put her survival at stake of, okay, well, this is really why I've been blocking building relating with you. And then there just wasn't there wasn't, there was the gremlin protection, um and so I felt really sad. I felt really sad about that. And so that's where I decided, okay, so she later on asked me, Dawe, would you like me to leave? And I said yes, because that is what I had observed, was there could be people making these huge offers for something else, and there was not somebody who could play on the other side.
I'm sorry, huge offers of saying,
Of
I want
something
to leave.
else. Yeah, of another type of relating, and there wasn't somebody that could play on the other side. And I felt joy throughout this process because it was really kind of in a free fall of I didn't know where this was going. I no, we kind of started with not so much clarity, and I really didn't know. I was realizing halfway through, like, ah, that's right. Our codex doesn't say anything about how somebody is asked to leave. We have this guardian team. We don't have like a whatever, a 1, 2, 3 step. Okay, if enough people vote yes, then this person has to leave. We didn't have any of that. And so I realized, this is really just about navigating and negotiating. And I realized part of the way through is, okay, so it starts with really making the ask. And I didn't know, okay, so we can make the ask, she can say no, what then? And unfortunately we didn't get to this place where it was an ask and then really the answer was no. But for a while it was sort of just relying, um can it really work, can it really work to just use feelings and make asks? And I don't think it does. Actually, my fear would be that, actually it's still an open question of like, what would have happened if she had just said, no, I am not leaving. I am not leaving. You're going to have to physically remove me from this property, or something like this, because for a couple minutes it seemed like that's where it was headed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just think it's so important, and I don't know what kind of process could cover all the bases, but it for asking somebody to leave, but it will be a good topic that now you have some experience with, for, kind of how to approach it, how to think about it, what process maybe the individuals can do with their own feelings. Devin, did you want to say anything about this? I know you weren't present, but you're very involved with the people.
Black box for me. So it all happened and nothing was different in my world in a way. I'm appreciating being part of this conversation because it I'm getting more information or just hearing more about it. So it wasn't a big conversation when I came back about what was going on. Even though I think I did have little conversations, this illuminates more.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of great questions that are coming up in here for me about something about like clarity for being right. As I think that's something you didn't quite say it, Leslie, but that kind of clarity that's about being right versus something that's just more about plain as day. This is this and it is not this. And there are consequences. I mean, I think that there's a purpose to being unclear, which is that there are different consequences.
Yeah.
So that's part of what I was hearing here. And yeah, I'm glad for there's also the conversation about inclusion and exclusion. And what an inclusive there are sacrifices in an inclusive community that people were not willing to make here. I think as part of the context atrophied because of even just 7 days of compromise. And it was I think it was still felt when I came back 7 days after this person left, where I was looking around, I was like, it does not feel how it did. Something's different. So yeah. I don't have big conclusions about that, but
What did you feel that was different?
just the quality of connection between people seemed not as it seemed like everyone had been through something. I could kind of sense a like an aftershock of or a shell shock or something is how it seemed to me a little bit. And I didn't there have been times where the intimacy in the Magic Cow Bridge House has been so ongoing and so and it's still now it is, but there was something where it it seemed like the mortar was missing a little bit.
This is something that's important. It's in a way so obvious, and I think it's so easy for myself to delude myself. It's like we learn these tools of like, I can energetically shrink my box down and connect being to being. Why can't I just do that? Why can't I just do that? Shouldn't we be able to navigate? This is a place about transformation. Okay, this is just another opportunity to transform. And the yeah, and the reality is it can be really disruptive to have just one person who is out of the context so much that Devin could come back a week later and still experience the shell shock in all of our bodies that has occurred. And especially for this context about transformation, especially for a short-term community, 3 months, there's a huge cost. And that became so clear to me is yes, I can spend my time being on this person for this really deep transformation, and the cost of the love and intimacy and other high drama that could be sourced with this time, attention, and energy is so high.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes down to choice and intention and clarity. I agree. I really agree with all that. And it's, yeah, it sounds like you have really made a lot of learning from this. And yeah, again, I just want to say if I sounded judgmental in any way, maybe because what happened didn't match with my ideal fantasy, and I think it was a fantasy. It I do this here at Ghana's also, where I just think, oh, if this and if that and that and this, then, but it's not like that. And I think you all are amazing. I'm glad to know you. I'm glad you had that experience, as hard as it was. Yeah. And I'm glad we talked, and I feel some fear that there is like fear that there isn't a way. There isn't a way to make everything work or something. I just feel this like I really want to believe that there's some, you would think I'm a religious person, but I'm not. Just this idea. Oh, next time we just do this a little bit more and that a little bit less. But I think I have nothing more to say besides thank you.
Thank you too, Leslie.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.